right. Actually, it's great to see y'all. This weekend. Thank you for joining us today. Glad to be here in Victorville. Also want to welcome our other campuses in Apple Valley and Phelan and Hesperia. Our online audience now joining us from wherever they are. We're just glad to have you today. I want to kick off the new year with a State of the Church challenge. It's somewhat of a tradition for the first weekend of every year. But before we get there, I want to just say thank you for your generous support once again. Another year of generosity has been a real encouragement to the whole church. You know, every year about this time, we're thinking about our resolutions for the new year, and if it's a typical year, then some of you are targeting generosity as a personal goal. And if that is the case, we provide a variety of options to help you get there. You know, sometimes our New Year's resolutions fall by the wayside and doesn't last very long. Online giving is not designed to just be a convenient way to give. It's not just to be cool in terms of technology and the options we provide. It's also a training tool because there are a couple of New Testament principles related to living generous lives that are important. One is planned giving, another is regular giving, and online giving will provide that as an encouragement, almost a training regimen for you. Over the last several years, the percentage of givers who have given online has grown incrementally each year. Now, 46% of regular givers at HTC do so online. And so to that group, I want to let you know that we'll be changing platforms this year. There's a group that we've engaged. The group's name is Tithely. Thought that was kind of funny, but it's not because of the name that we have connected with them. Their platform is not only simpler, but saves HTC money. Every one of those platforms costs a little bit of money every time somebody gives a donation, so this is actually going to save our church over the current platform that we have been using. You'll hear a little bit more about that in coming weeks. But since this is a State of the Church presentation, it might be helpful for some of you to see what every dollar we contribute to the church actually does. Last year, 2018, was a great year for a High Desert church. And I know when we come together at these campuses each weekend, we experience that. You know, you've got volunteers and staff ready to greet you and to help you find your way and to minister to your kids and your students. And now you're sitting in one of these 4 rooms. And even our online audience, providing that is something that allows individuals into this room to enjoy. Weekends are a no-brainer. We have a blast at all of our sites each weekend. But in addition to what we do on the weekends, we welcomed in 2018 13 new staff members, a very ethnically diverse group of wonderful people. Some of you have had the privilege of meeting or getting to know some of them. Maybe some of you have had the chance to meet all of them. I don't know. I have. And they're all great. And it was a great year to add members to our team. We launched HTC Online, which many are benefiting from as I speak, but that allows anyone, anywhere in the world to share in a live stream of all of our weekend services. Now, we launched this at Christmas Eve. How many of you in each of these rooms on all of our campuses attended one of our Christmas Eve services, one of our 8 services? We had a blast, and we met together, but in addition to coming together 8 times, there were 1,015 new devices logged on for the live stream of our Christmas Eve services, and that was the initial launch of HTC Online. That represented 35 different states and 4 different countries, and so it was a great launch for what we hope will be an added benefit for thousands of people around the world to join us each weekend. Last year, we provided 190 sermon-based small groups across all 4 of our campuses, incorporating 2,200 adults on a regular basis. Additionally, there were 550 adults across all 4 of our campuses who participated in other groups, support groups, groups dealing with addiction and depression and grief sharing, cancer support, raising special needs children groups evolved out of those support groups. And so in addition to our regular small groups, another 550 adults met together to help them deal with some of those issues. We baptized 228 people last year. 350 adults officially joined the church. We exceeded our $1.5 million goal for a capital campaign, which allowed us to do a number of things. We purchased property, paid cash for property for our Apple Valley campus. They're over there screaming out loud right now, I think. We're able to pay off the note for this auditorium, for Powell Auditorium. We're able to fund construction for a children's facility at our Hesperia campus. And if you're at our Hesperia campus right now, you're thinking, funny, I didn't see the building when I drove in today. And that's because we're still trying to figure out things with the city, but we're hoping the construction will begin soon. The point is, funds have already been made available for that through your generosity. We're also able to fund the transfer of portable buildings onto the property we had already purchased for our Phelan campus. Already purchased that a year or two ago, and now we're able to put portable buildings on that campus for some midweek and meetings and some office capacity. And so, that Hometown Advantage campaign was a great experience for our church. You gave $54,000 in addition to that, $54,000 to help send 775 kids and counselors to summer camp. I mean, that's a big deal. We received, this is a record for HTC, we received $8.75 million for general operating expenses. And we know what that provides us on the weekend. But did you know that that fund also provided support for flood victims in Texas, for fire victims in California? We were able to complete all of our clean water projects in Malawi, Africa. All 24 clean water well projects are now up and functioning. Our students built homes for 18 families in Mexico. Our students. And you provided the funds for that. We were able to provide support for 40 mission agencies around the globe. We provided significant support for the warming shelter in Victorville, as well as the local high desert teen pregnancy center. We provided literacy and health training along with the gospel for an entire language group in India. And we helped launch the first ever Christian liberal arts college in South Africa. We were able to do that in 2018. Just saying. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about sinful pride, so don't get too jacked up about that. But it is something that, we can just be thankful to God that He allowed us to have a part in what He is doing all over the world. I read this past week about New Year's resolutions. It was a great sign. I can't believe it's been a year since I didn't become a better person. I know some of you don't get that, but it's really funny when it sinks in and you understand what it means. And while I thought that was funny, I was also thinking to myself, as a church, we have become a better church. We have become better people, making an ever-increasing impact throughout the entire world as a church family. 4 campuses, now welcoming an online audience. At the same time, we are one church. And I just have never been more proud to be the senior leader of this ministry. Now, having said that, this month marks Cheryl's and my 35th anniversary of our being called to High Desert, then High Desert Baptist Church. Been here 35 years. I was 29 years old. I was in my 20s. I was 29. That's still in your 20s, right? Yeah, I was 29. We started this church during the Ice Age. Cheryl, my beautiful wife, was 21. And the church numbered about 125 people. We met in the chapel here on our Victorville campus for one service every Sunday morning. What is now the island here, where you get your lattes and your donuts and whatever other resources you need up here at the island. That was our offices during the week, and it was the nursery the nursery on the weekends. So we had to lock everything up. The kids are rifling through our drawers. It was really pretty exciting. Hook Boulevard dead-ended into our driveway as you're driving west. In fact, when you came to the end of the road, you had a choice. You could turn right into the Hook Junior High School parking lot or turn left into the High Desert Baptist Church parking lot. There was virtually nothing west of our campus. You couldn't see anything but desert. That was a long time ago. You know, for 20 years I grew up in a pastor's family and lived at home. My dad, of course, was a pastor after I left home, but I lived with my folks for 20 years. And during those 20 years, it was a great ride, and it was an honor to be a pastor's kid. But over those 20 years, my dad served 6 different churches. The national average for a pastor's tenure at one church is about 3.5 years. And you have allowed Cheryl and I to be here and our family to grow up here. We have been here 10 times the national average. We have been privileged to be here with you for almost an entire life of ministry. Being blessed to work with some of the greatest people like ever. And this is truly a team mission, and we've had a blast. It's been an amazing ride. But simple math will tell you that it can't be all that long before HTC will need a new senior pastor. Cheryl and I have always wanted to step down from this role before we needed to, rather than hang around long after we should have. And you know how that works, because sometimes in sports, an athlete will hang on with the team a little too long, and it actually damages the long-term benefit or the long-term health of the franchise. And so, am I saying I'm an athlete? Well, no. But last year, at my request, Cheryl's and my request, our board commissioned our senior leadership team to begin the process of finding my replacement. And we began a succession plan. Now, this is going to take a while. So if you like me, don't be freaking out any day soon. If you don't like me, don't get too excited any day soon. Because it's going to take a while to find the right guy and to complete the transition process. And I want you to know, we're not in any hurry to leave. If we'd have wanted to leave the high desert, we have had plenty of opportunities over the years to do so. We're not looking to, get out of Dodge as quickly as possible. But I just believe that the next season of HTC's development will require younger leadership. It'll require fresh vision. It'll require more energy. And so I want you to pray with Cheryl and our family and our board and me, all of us who truly believe. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. Actually, I don't, because I'm very excited about this. But we truly believe, the best years of High Desert Church's ministry is still in front of us. And so anyway, I was recently asked, I'm just tired, so never mind. 8 Christmas Eve services, my goodness. Anyway, I was recently asked, in fact, it was recently, it's really not that recent, it was last year at a small group leaders event. And Paul, our delightful, he'll laugh when he hears that I called him delightful. He is delightful. Paul, our small groups pastor, he asked me the question, when it comes to this transition, and HTC has a new leader and Tom is no longer the pastor here, what is my greatest fear about that reality? And I told the group that day, I'm going to tell you what I told the group. I am afraid that this church will be looking for the perfect guy. Because he won't be replacing a perfect guy. And you know that. We've shared life together for a long time. But everyone involved in this type of quest just has to recognize that the one we really want to be our senior leader is not available because he died 2,000 years ago on a Roman cross and then ascended to heaven. And while we have defined some key qualifications for a candidate, nobody's going to check all of those boxes to everybody's satisfaction. And so we all need to take a deep breath right now. Even before we get into this thing too far, take a deep breath, take a step back, and all prepare ourselves for some degree of disappointment. And I want you to know that 35 years ago, see, High Desert Church is horrible at finding senior pastors. We haven't done this in a long time. And when you did it last time, the search committee had 3 qualifications they were looking for. You know how many qualifications? The candidate they proposed to the church, who was eventually hired, which is, of course, me. You know how many boxes? Of those 3 boxes, you know how many I checked? 0. And they hired me anyway. So anyway, all I'm saying is this. Whoever the candidate turns out to be, this time will be like his predecessor. He'll be a very imperfect choice, but he will be the right choice. See, my fear is that people will have their favorite, well, this is who we should hire. Kind of like the Corinthian church. Remember what happened back in the Corinthian church? If you don't, I'll tell you right now. And the Apostle Paul called them out for this because it was very unhealthy. He called them out for thinking so territorially. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 12. He says this. He says, some of close household have informed me that you guys are fighting over this. You're having quarrels among you. And what I mean is this. Some of you say, I want Paul as our leader. Some of you say, I want Apollos as our leader. Some of you say, I want Cephas, which, by the way, is the Apostle Peter, who would have been another wonderful choice. These aren't just 3 different guys. These guys each represent 3 different subgroups in the Corinthian church. You see, there were the edgy ones in the group. That was the younger group. In our context, be the millennials. And the Apostle Paul was their choice because he was a little bit out there, see. He was pushing the envelope. And then there was Apollos, who was the super gifted teacher. Man, he just was so great as a presenter. And then Peter, he was more of a traditionalist. He kind of drew in the more traditionalist vote. And the church was actually arguing over which of these guys should be the next senior pastor. Interesting thing is there's no indication whatsoever that these guys were fueling that debate. They weren't vying for the top spot. They were content to simply contribute whatever they could contribute to the church. It was the church family who was divided. The church family who became so territorial. Now, I want you to know that our guys are not trying to influence our decision for who's going to be the next senior leader here. And we don't know who will eventually take the con, as they say in the Navy. But if it does become a popularity battle, then our entire church family is going to be the losers here. See, the message today, it's not just state of the church address. The message today is this: avoid a spiritual ambush. See, when it comes to the topic of leadership, one of my favorite guys in the whole Bible is a guy named Gideon. And so I want to introduce him to you. If you don't know much about him, you've probably heard his name. You certainly have understood or have been exposed to some of the things that happened during his life, as we'll see today. But in Judges chapter 6, we meet this guy. And what this guy did is he declined or pulled himself out of the role that God had called him to fill. He was in a wine press. When we meet Gideon in Judges chapter 6, he's in this wine press in a pit in the ground so that the Midianites would not find him. The Midianites were invaders. They were the enemies of Israel. They were like Raiders. And Raider fan, you're not in the playoffs, so it's okay, I can bring this up. They were like the Marauders. They were like the evil guys. They were brutal. They were violent. And the Jewish people were afraid of them. And so here we have a national leader, Gideon, living inside of a hole, working a wine press. And an angel shows up and addresses him in a very ironic way. Look at what the angel said. The angel appeared to Gideon and he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." See, I think that's funny. Here we have a national leader hiding in a hole, working a wine press, and the angel says, "Hey, mighty warrior." I wonder when I read that if the angel's being a little sarcastic, like, "Look at you," right? On the other hand, probably the angel is simply reminding Gideon of who he actually is. This is not what God called you to be, bro. You're a mighty warrior, and God is now going to call you out of that hole, and he's going to call on you to lead the nation of Israel. Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you. This is how Gideon responds. He says, pardon me, Lord. It's like, excuse me? But if the Lord is actually with us, why has all this happened to us? Man, that's a question we've all asked God, isn't it? You come on the weekend, you hear a pastor say, no, the Lord is with you. And you're sitting there thinking, if the Lord is with me, if the Lord is with us, then why is my life the way it is? Why have things turned out the way they have? See, what the angel is doing is he's going to begin pushing Gideon back into the game. He's going to push Gideon back into that role that God called him to fill. Gideon's not too sure yet, so he asked God for some reassurance. You ever heard that term, you're going to put out your fleece? You ever heard that? This story is where it came from. Gideon says, just to make sure that we're moving the right direction, Lord, I got the sheepskin fleece, and I'm going to put it on the ground tonight. And if in the morning it is wet with the dew, and the ground all around it is dry, that'd be kind of like a miracle. So then I'll believe that God is actually moving me forward to fulfill this mission. And so next morning, dude wakes up. And when he wakes up, he sees the wet fleece on the dry ground. And he says, that's weird. Just to be sure, let's reverse the formula. Let's try it for another night. He says, let's do this one more time, only this time if the fleece is dry and the ground is wet, then I'm in. So he wakes up the next day. Sure enough, the fleece was the only dry thing sitting on this wet ground. And so Gideon begins to recognize that God is going to use him to lead the nation against the Midianites. So in the next chapter, Judges chapter 7, here's this guy who's already reluctant to go into battle. And the number of troops that God provides him is 32,000 troops. The Israeli army could only talk 32,000 guys in defending it against these Midianite raiders. And he was about to face an enemy that was numbered at 135,000 troops. You know what that means? Odds aren't good, bro. You got 4 enemy troops for every one of yours. And so he says, Lord, the number of our troops presents a problem. And God said, you know what? I was thinking about that myself, and I think you're right. It is a problem. So he said, you got too many men. And Gideon's thinking, no, that's not exactly what I was referring to. But God says, I can't deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would begin to brag that our army beat their army. Even at 4-1, odds aren't good, but you're saying there's a chance? Yep. And so in verse 3, God says to Gideon, make an announcement to your 32,000 guys. Say this, anyone who trembles with fear, anyone who's afraid of this battle that's looming here on the horizon, anybody who's trembling with fear can turn back and leave Mount Gilead. Can you imagine that? Hey, if anybody's afraid, you just go home, no questions asked, no dock and pay. There's going to be no retaliation here. You can just walk. You know how many troops said, seriously? Okay, we can go home? 22,000 troops left, which means now we're down to 10,000. 10,000 troops. Why did God want to dismiss 22,000 guys? I'll tell you why. Here's a spiritual principle. You might want to write some things down here. Fear is intoxicating. Fear will mess you up. Fear will cause you to stumble around like you're drunk. And the last thing any nation needs is for its frontline defenders to be inebriated. And that's why you got to trust your resources. That's why God says it's not about how many people you got on the battlefield. It's about who's behind the army. See, last year I told you that in my opinion, courage is not a personal trait. I don't meet courageous people. And we can test. Maybe you would say, no, I'm courageous. Okay, so you're walking home tonight, and I don't know how he got in the high desert, but there's this, 12-foot, when he stands up, 12-foot grizzly bear. And he pops out of nowhere, and he just confronts you on your little walk. Okay, I'm going to ask you the question. Are you brave? Or do you scream and turn around and run? See, you did what you should do. Because you can't fight a bear on your own. But in the process, what if I tossed you a Remington 870 12 gauge, 7 load, and I said, okay, I want you to stand your ground. See, you might be able to muster up enough courage to rack that thing and say, okay, let's rock and roll, right? Now, have you changed? Not at all. What's changed? Now you got resources. You understand what I'm saying? You know what courage is? It's the ability to recognize and trust your resources. And that's all God's saying. I want you to understand who your resource is. I don't want you to be bragging about the fact that you can stare down a grizzly bear. I want you to recognize that I'm behind you. But now we're down to 10,000 guys, and if I'm a battlefield commander, I know we're going in the wrong direction, right? And so I say to God, 13-1 odds is not what I was hoping for. Which, man, 13-1. The Midianite commander could say to his first 13 soldiers, you take out that one Israelite. Next 13, you take out that one Israelite. Next 13, and so on all the way down the line. This is insane. So Gideon says, Lord, I'm not sure that works. And God responds this way in verse 4. You know what, Gideon? I'm with you, man. Still too many guys. So take him down to the water, and I'll thin them out there. If I say this one shall go with you, he goes. If I say this one won't, he won't. So Gideon took the men down to the water, and the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. In other words, those who, everybody's thirsty, right? Those who plant their face in the water, oblivious to what's going on around them, those are the ones you want to dismiss. The ones that might get down on one knee and bring up the water and drink that water while they're vigilant, while they're still watching, those are the ones I want you to keep. 300 of them drank from the cupped hands. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. You know what the odds are now? 450 Midianite soldiers to every one Israelite soldier. See, this principle is so pervasive in our lives. I just want you to understand something. God is not impressed with numbers. Some of you struggle a little bit financially. You only got X number of dollars, right? Pastor Tom gets up and says, no, you should be generous. And you're thinking, okay, I've got a limited number of dollars to make ends meet. That budget is already stretched to the point where it's about ready to break, and you're telling me that I need to reduce the number of dollars I have to pay those bills. Why would Pastor Tom ever say that? Because God doesn't need your financial help. God wants you to learn to trust your resources. And the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 guys, I mean, who would have thunk? 300 guys against 135,000. With those 300 men, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. How could God use those 300 guys? Number one, because they were confident, they were not afraid. And number two, because they were vigilant and they didn't bury their heads in the river. See, if fear is intoxicating, carelessness is dangerous. So you need to watch out. You need to be confident and you need to be careful. Can I just suggest that as High Desert Church seeks a new senior leader, we have to be confident that God's in this and careful about who we hire. But this isn't just a search for a pastor. This is what you have to understand tomorrow when you go back to work, when you go back to school, when you go back into your life. You need to be confident and you need to be careful. Gideon found the right balance, and when the battle was over, 120,000 of the 135,000 troops had been killed, and Israel won that war. Why? Because God doesn't need help. He just wants us to be confident and careful, and to trust that He is leading us. Now, in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul is going to weigh in. Same principles. And he's going to tell us the same things. Be confident, but at the same time, watch out. Be careful. And he's going to now focus in on two different types of people you have to watch out for. Look at Romans chapter 16. Romans chapter 16 says, I urge you, brothers and sisters. This is not a suggestion. This is an urgent matter. Watch out for those who cause divisions. Number one, type of people you want to watch out for are the ones who cause divisions. Now, you have opinions, and I have opinions. All God's children have opinions. We always think we're right. If we ever thought an opinion was wrong, we would change our opinion so we could think we were right once again. Do you think you are right when you have an argument with your spouse? Do you think you're right when you have a conversation in your small group, when you have a discussion around here? All of us think that the church, our family, our marriage, everything would be better off if people just did everything around here the way I think they should do it, right? And can I just say that having that conviction that you're right, there's nothing wrong with that. Once again, if you thought you were wrong and you didn't change your mind, you'd be a moron. So go ahead and think you're right, but how do we maintain unity in a group? How do we maintain a unified marriage, a unified family, even a unified church when everybody thinks they're right? Okay, this is the key. Remain focused on your mission. You say, well, what does that mean? Stay in your lane, man. Gideon, stay focused on your mission. You 300 troops, you're focused on your mission. God can do great things through fewer people, fewer dollars, fewer everything. If we just stay focused on what God's called us to do. You know what your mission is. We went over this last year at the end of the year. You made a list of people. That's your mission. At a conference years ago, a speaker referred to the church as an army, which is fair if you read the New Testament. You know, we're in a spiritual war. And this is what he said. He was a veteran, a military vet himself, and so he had some history in the military that helped him say what he said. And so I'm just quoting. He said, the guys on the front line didn't complain much. They were too busy fighting the enemy. Camaraderie was built quickly. People had to work together. It was a matter of life and death. They took their objectives and strategies seriously. Successful execution was imperative. Little things such as how the food tasted didn't matter. What did matter was that they stayed alive to eat it. But once you went a few miles back behind the front lines, attitudes changed drastically. Back there, griping was a way of life. Men complained about everything, the food, the weather, the officers. Something was wrong with everyone and everything. End of quote. That describes a lot of churches. And the reason that Christians complain and argue is because nobody's given them something better to do. Y'all are on the front line. Y'all have been given frontline responsibilities. Stay in your lane, remain confident, remain vigilant, and do your job. See, the body of Christ is a team. It is not a league. We don't fight each other. We don't line up against each other. We actually come together and play together in order to defeat our common enemy. We talk to couples, families all the time about this. Couples come in, they're fighting like the spouse is the enemy. And we try to tell them, you both have an enemy, but it's not each other. You need to come together and fight your common enemy who is trying to destroy you. You got to watch out for people who cause divisions. In fact, what he says at the end, we'll get there in a minute, keep away from them. Whew. You imagine that? You imagine God giving anybody in your life the advice to stay away from you. Y'all have to be careful not to be that guy. And then also, number two, another group, watch out for those who are proud of themselves. I urge you, brothers and sisters, watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way. Okay, what does that mean? All right, here we go. The world is full of expectations. Your world is. Everybody has expectations for you, right? Your spouse has expectations for you. Your kids have expectations for you. Your employer has expectations for you. All God's children got expectations for you. And on the flip side, you've got expectations for all of them as well. Managing expectations is a spiritual discipline. Unhealthy expectations in any social context, any relationship. Unhealthy expectations become obstacles and can be a trap. And that's why you have to remain alert. That's why you have to be vigilant. That's why carelessness is dangerous. And you got to be on top of your game, bro. We all have to make sure that the expectations we put on other people are based on God's word, not based on our own perfectionistic insecurities. You know, earlier in Paul's life, he wasn't even Paul. His given name was Saul. Paul the Apostle, BC, before he met Jesus, he was actually Saul the Pharisee. And when he was Saul the Pharisee, he was really, really proud of himself. He was really, really proud of his accomplishments. You see, when I say, watch out for people who are proud of themselves, I don't mean that, something goes well in your life and you're kind of happy with yourself and you pat yourself on the back and say, man, that thing worked. I didn't even think it'd work. It worked. Wow, that was cool. I know we've all accomplished things. And we've seen a plan come together and we have that feeling of self-satisfaction. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those people who are really, really proud of themselves to the point where it becomes a problem. That's what Saul of Tarsus was. He was too confident. Too confident. And Jesus had so transformed Saul's life, he actually changed his name. He said, I'm a different guy. My name now is Paul, not Saul. And as the Apostle Paul, he knew that any attitude of superiority is a trap. In fact, the word for obstacles there in that verse, the word obstacles, in the Greek word, listen to this word, scandala. Now, does that sound like an English word? What English word? And this is not rocket science, so don't overanalyze this. What English word seems to come out of that Greek term scandala? Scandal. The word actually means trap. In fact, I love words, especially when I'm trying to understand the New Testament. And so going back and looking at the etymology or the history, the development of the word, it comes from a root word meaning stick. Like you would use a stick in a very crude trap, an old world trap, where you'd have a device that would entrap the animal, you'd prop it up with a stick, the animal would come sniffing around, right? And somehow kick the stick, and the trap then would fall on the animal, you caught the animal. It's a trap. It's a very simple thought. If you're too proud of yourself, you'll trip the stick, and you'll trap yourself. And that's the stuff that scandals are made of. Do I have to remind you that the church landscape around this country, even around the world, is littered with church leaders who were really, really proud of themselves. And it became a scandal. Even the Apostle Paul, right? This is what he learned when he met Jesus. In Philippians, a whole different church in Romans, but same Apostle Paul, Philippians chapter 3, he says, whatever were gains to me, whatever I was really, really proud of myself for accomplishing, now I consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage, that I might gain Christ. You say garbage is a strong word. Oh man, you don't know how strong it is. You know what the word is? It's skubalon. You know what it means? I don't even know what to say. That is as graciously as I could think of to say the word. And I apologize if that's offensive to anybody. Skubalon. I attended a conservative Christian college, and it's still conservative. It's now Biola University. It's still a very conservative school. But back in the 70s, it was way conservative. That was the 1970s, not the 1870s. But in the 1970s, it was way conservative. And one of my professors, it was in a psychology class, I'll never forget this. I was a psychology major. And one of my professors was explaining this particular passage in one of his lectures, and he didn't use the term, he was explaining what it meant, but he didn't use the term poop. He used another word with the same basic meaning. And I'm not going to tell you what that word is, but it is the word you're thinking about right now. And I thought then, as I'm listening to him, and I still believe to this day, that it was a very inappropriate thing for him to say to that group or any group. But his point was that Christians are typically more bothered by describing it that way than we are bothered by our sinful pride. The word at the end of verse 8, loss, I consider it a loss. That's a significant word. In fact, that verb, considering it a loss, is in the aorist tense in the Greek. It's a past tense, and what it refers to is an event in the past that happened once and for all. It doesn't reoccur. It just happened once. And it has ongoing ramification, but it happened once. And what Paul is referring to is the day he's on his way to Damascus. Remember, as Saul, the Pharisee, and on that road he met Jesus. And you know what happened on that day? He flushed. That's what happened. Once and for all, he recognized that an attitude that says, I'm better than y'all for any reason, is not only demeaning to them, it's a discouragement to Jesus. We all fight this battle. And even though the depth of our Jewishness, as was the case in Saul's life, the depth of our Jewishness and being proud of our accomplishments and fulfilling the Jewish law, that's not the battlefield you and I are engaged in. But there are so many other things in our lives that can become generators for self-confidence and attitudes of superiority. And you know what you need to do? You need to watch out, man. I mean, don't be fearful, but never get too full of yourselves. Watch out for people who always want the spotlight, who always want the stage, because you know what they'll eventually become? An obstacle. They'll become a living scandal. Last passage of the day. I love Jeremiah. He says, this is what the Lord says. If you're wise, don't boast about being smart. If you're strong, don't boast about your own strength. If you're rich, don't boast about your riches. Why? Who gave you your wisdom? Who gave you your strength? Who gave you your money? God did. Y'all want to boast? Then boast about this. You know God. See. And this is not just about being careful about choosing church leaders or choosing friends to hang with in life. This is about how we can avoid being that guy. We can avoid being the type of person that Jesus would actually want others to avoid. Do not divide the body of Christ. That is like no bueno. Do not promote your own opinions to the point where you feel like it's all about you and all about what you think. Do not seek the spotlight. Do not put unnecessary burdens on others to be like you. Because if you do, your world, watch this, under the advisement of the Apostle Paul himself, your world would do well to avoid you. That's a spiritual ambush waiting to happen right there. So don't be afraid. Actually, I should have told you this. There's only one line in every book of the 66 books of the Bible that's common to all 66 books. Only one line. You'll find in all of them. You know what it is? Don't be afraid. On the other hand, don't get cocky. Find that balance. And Father, I pray that we will. I pray that this would be a great year as we have absolute confidence in you. Our resource, capital R, our resource, moving forward, but giving you all the glory, not seeking any of the spotlight for ourselves. Lord, help us not to be that guy. Help us to avoid those individuals so that we can remain focused on the mission that you have called us to fulfill. Lord, would we stay in our lane? Would we remain focused on our frontline responsibilities in 2019? Everybody's head bowed, your eyes closed. Okay. Some of you still haven't given your heart to Christ. So you know the drill, right? You've been here before, ABC. Can you admit that yet, that you're a sinner? Can you believe that yet, that Jesus can save you? Are you willing to choose, even yet, place your faith in him? Admit, believe, choose. Man, this year would be so much different than last year for you if you would just ABC this thing and answer the bell. God is calling you today. He's got a great, great year ahead for you, and he wants to lead you through it, be your resource in it all. So take that opportunity if you need to right now. Say, Lord, I admit I'm a sinner, believe Jesus is the Savior. I choose to place my faith in Jesus, and it's in his great name. All God's children said.